Hello, my wonderful people. Welcome back to Eke React. Today, I bring you now with some of the trending updates of happenings in Nigeria. So, like play, Mr. Dele Farotimi will be spending Christmas in prison. This shows you how Afe Babalola is very powerful and how he controls so many top personnel in Nigeria. After so many talks from so many lawyers, none of them fit release him from detention. So this woman activist lawyer don't come talk so many things. Dele Farotimi tell am when him visit am in detention. And also he send message to Peter Obi. You guys are aware that earlier Peter Obi visited Dele Farotimi in prison, and this caused so many talks on the internet. So without wasting much of your time, let's dive into this video. But before then, subscribe to this channel because subscription is free, and also drop your own opinion on the comment section.
Back to Inside Sources. Today, I'm opening the show with an update on the situation with Mr. Dele Farotimi, who has been held remanded in Ekiti State for about 2 weeks now. My first guest is a human rights lawyer and activist, Mr. Tope Temoku, who actually had a meeting with Mr. Dele Farotimi on Friday. Mr. Tope Temoku, welcome to Inside Sources.
Thank you, Sam. It's my pleasure to be with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So can you tell us how did your meeting with Dele, how did it go on Friday?
Yes, thank you. I visited Mr. Dele Farotimi in the correctional service in Ekiti, Ekiti State, yesterday in the afternoon for one purpose.
Okay.
One, we have been involved in this matter since his arrest.
Okay.
We have been in court. We have been following the events, and we also have our own stake, as citizens of the country, based on the fact that what is at stake now, what is going on, is beyond persons. It's not just about persons, The country is above everybody. The country is bigger than everybody. The country is bigger than Afe Babalola. The country is bigger than Mr. Dele Farotimi. So in the entire picture, people that are far-sighted and foresighted to be able to see beyond the issue of reputation and defamation. So that is our involvement, as members of society. And because of the fact that the events of the recent days, the visit of Mr. Peter Obi, the presidential candidate of Labour Party for Ekiti, his visit to Afe Babalola, his visit to Mr. Dele Farotimi in the prison, actually created some kind of unclarity. People are not so clear about the state of things. People are not clear about what is going on and where we are in the matter. So it is on the basis of this I had to visit him yesterday in prison.
Okay. And
we sat together. We had a very lengthy discussion. Before I went to it, I was also under a confusion that Mr. Peter Obi had visited Afe Babalola after leaving Ekiti. The news that filtered to town is on the fact that issue of conditions for release, issue of apology, issue of pain, issue of whether if Mr. Dele Farotimi is able to do this or that will come out. And for some of us who are involved, who have also taken a principled stand on this matter, who believe there should be justice for Afe Babalola, there should be justice for anybody who is involved, there should be justice for anybody who we are alleged to have been defamed, and there should also be justice for Mr. Dele Farotimi, and there should be justice for the society. As a stakeholder, I felt so confused. So that was the reason why we had to along to it. And the meeting was very, very, it's very, very productive. And I'm not a stranger to him. I told him that, sir, the reason why I am here is to confirm from you what is your state of mind. What are you thinking about this soap matter? What do you think should be done? The visit of Mr. Peter Obi to you in prison and the subsequent visit to Afe Babalola, what do you know about it? What is your message to Afe Babalola? What is your message to the people outside? Who are also your lovers and fans? What is also your message to me as part of your legal team?
Okay.
He said, if this is how it started.
Okay.
He said, if anybody who is very familiar with his antecedent, with his principle, with his philosophy over time, should join anybody to believe that in a matter where he had written a book, that he had published, that had been in circulation, that if anybody, somebody who has a brain, should join others to believe that he has sent anybody to beg anybody, he said he will be so disappointed in that person. And he told me categorically that if you join anybody to believe that I could beg anybody, or that I have sent anybody to beg anybody, he said I will be so disappointed in you. He said, because it's not possible. And he said, I am in here. I don't know what is going on outside. You are the one who knows what is going on outside there. And if you have come to this place now, what I need from you is information. The information at my disposal yesterday was that after Mr. Peter Obi left me, probably whether he went to Afe or not is not my business, because I cannot control where he's going to visit. It's another third man too,
yes.
Former presidential candidate. So I don't know his movement. I can't predict where he's going to visit, but I didn't send him to beg anybody.
Okay.
And having not done that, you as a lawyer, and for those who still believe in me and the cause out there, their line of thinking should be along the line that justice should be served to all parties. He said that if that is book that he wrote,
yes,
that if we had added one single line of lie, one single word of lie to that book, he said he's going to be defeated in this matter. But that if all he has said is the whole truth, he said people that are fighting him are fighting the truth, and that he's going to have the laugh last. And I felt relieved. I said, this is my mission for coming.
Excellent.
And now we clarified this, we can now go to all other things.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mr. Tope Temoku, for that clarification. Now, you are also a lawyer yourself, and I wanted to ask you, so we have the High Court, the Federal High Court in Ekiti, granting him bail, but a court of lower jurisdiction, the magistrate, is not granting him bail. So as a lawyer, legally, which one ought to stand?
The truth of the matter is that the charges before these two courts, they are not the same. We were in court first on the 4th of December, and all the charges before the magistrate court that day, they said that of the criminal defamation, criminal libel. Right. All the charges, they were brought pursuant to Criminal Code Acts, and they all center on criminal libel, defamation. The magistrate didn't grant bail. He told the representations to go and put bail application into written form. Some of us were not happy with that pronouncement. The magistrate court is a court of summary jurisdiction. Even without a lawyer appearing or a defendant, that court is under a duty. In the case of a bailable offence, it's under a duty to grant bail. But to request for a bail application to be put into a written form, is a sort of presumption of guilt against the defendant. The reason being that a magistrate court is under a duty to grant bail because that defendant is presumed to be innocent. The moment he was brought before that magistrate, he is to grant bail. The defendant may not go that same day. If he's not able to perfect his bail conditions, to meet his bail conditions, but the magistrate is under a duty to grant bail. So having all that bail application that ordinarily, customarily is made orally and being considered by the courts is now being requested to be in written form, and the matter is now adjourned for another number of days, and for like 6 days. It was adjourned to December 10. Some of us were not happy with that position. It is the court. The court is the court. That is for the magistrate. But immediately after the magistrate court arraignment, other charges were filed under the Cybercrime Act before the magistrate court, before the Federal High Court. Those other charges, they are related to the charges before the magistrate court, but they are not the same thing. The charges before the magistrate court, all of them were brought under Criminal Code Act, while the one before the Federal High Court, they were brought under Cybercrime Act. You know, alleging cyber stalking, you know, and all of those as contained in that. So the main conditions, the main circumstances of the two courts, they are not related. If Mr. Dele Farotimi meets the bail condition of the Federal Court today, and he has not met those ones of the magistrate court, that means he will still be in custody, because there is one charge here that is still holding him. If he meets the one of magistrate court today and he has not made that of Federal High Court, he's still going to be in custody, because there are two different courts, two different charges, different bail conditions.
Okay, interesting.
We may not be happy with this, but that is what it is now.
All right, you know, last question, just so we don't take so much of your time. Thank you for coming. How can you describe his spirit, you know, during your meeting with him, and how does he feel to the idea that he's being punished already, even without any judicial pronouncement on whether he has defamed Chief Afe Babalola or not? How did you think he felt, and what kind of spirit is he in, as you can see in your meeting?
Well, after my visit yesterday, for me, I also learned new things. You know, when I got to that place with two other persons, I was told some other people were still with him, and that whether we have to go and join them. And I told them that my mission here was certainly going to be different from those other people who came to visit. Let them be true before we go in. So we met him, you know, amidst high spirit in terms of, you know, I just finished discussion with some people before we came here. Immediately we came here and he saw me, hey, doctor, how are you? And we stood up and, you know, and he was very clear about one thing. He said, even being here, he had kind of the spirit of philosophization, and people go higher. That people inside the prison here, you could even see better than those of us outside, because in those days, before he was remanded, he didn't have enough time, you know, to conceptualize properly, with clarity to rest and to think ahead. But I've been here now, that way, you know, he's going to go out of this place. Why? Because he's only known to one weapon. He's very emphatic about that. He said he's going to go out of this place vindicated because he's holding on to one weapon, and that is the truth. His spirit is very high. His voice is not low. He's still as clear as he used to be. He is still the philosophical Dele Farotimi. He's still analytical. You know, he's even more relaxed, and he's taking us through things. Because immediately I got that clarification that I didn't send anybody to beg, and that he's not going to beg. We have to talk about Nigerian politics. We have to go over things, discussions about what is going on, and he was not bothered about his own personal case that is incarcerated. You know, we discussed over all sorts of issues, and he told me one thing, that what those who are fighting him there, he was laughing. He said they are not fighting him, that they are fighting the truth. Because I wanted to convince myself that there are things that this man actually know that we don't know. I was trying to tell him some of the implications of if some of these things are not true. He said no. He said no. That what is holding him now, just like I've said in one of my people today, I said there are lawsuits that have been filed against Mr. Dele Farotimi in Rivers State, in Abuja and Ibadan. And the court processes have been served on him in prison, where he cannot even make a defense. You know, so those who are serving court processes, they know that this man's hand has been tied to the bar, and they are fighting him. And he's just laughing. He said the situation is not going to last. He's going to walk out of this place, and that the truth will work out with him. And that the truth will not die. The truth will come out. But that is that with that truth, that weapon of truth, he said he's going to defeat him. He's going to defeat his adversaries. And it's very clear about that. He doesn't have any doubt. He doesn't entertain any doubt.
Excellent.
He doesn't. And my spirit is lifted. Excellent. When I left him.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Can you tell us, just to wrap up, what was the condition, under which he's being held that you saw? What was his condition like? The environment.
Well, Well, I think Ekiti prison is Ekiti prison. I think that is the normal Nigerian prison. Because in the course of discussion, he was actually talking about his prison condition. You know, some of the inmates there, when he got there, the kind of mentality, how they saw all of the, whether about 11 people, how they saw one another like adversaries, like opponents, like competitors, like rivals. And the rival about everything. You know, they have somebody who's a provost who likes to shoot the other people, the other people like to rebel, and that they were not united. And I had to sit them down. He philosophized to them. He told them that what you are doing here is what we are doing in the larger country that has not made us to be liberated. You have to love yourself. You have to be united, come together. He brought all of them together.
Wow.
And that whatever in that cell now is the most united part of this country. Everybody is a lover of everybody.
Interesting. Interesting. Thank you so much. That's a very that's a very good report, and it's a very good place to end this discussion. Thank you so much, Mr. Tope Temokun, human rights lawyer and activist. Like I said, we are also committed, and we will promote and we will ensure, we will clamor for a fair process, a due process under the rule of law, under a transparent judicial process to sort this matter. And we believe that that is what is going to happen. The truth is going to come out by the grace of God. Thank you so much for coming to Inside Sources. And Inside Sources will be right back with our second segment. Welcome back to Inside Sources. Today, on our main segment, we want to look at the future of Nigeria against the backdrop of what the politicians have started talking about. And if you get the time, a few other issues. Now, I do have a panel to join me in this important discussion. Here in the studio, I have Malam Baba Yusuf, strategist, policy advisor, and the group CEO of GITC. Malam Baba Yusuf, you are welcome back to Inside Sources.
Thank you, Prof, for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm from virtually in Lagos. For the first time, I'd like to introduce Mr. Dayo Akintobi, a public affairs analyst and a veteran journalist. I'd like to welcome him to Inside Sources. Mr. Akintobi, welcome to Inside Sources.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
All right, excellent. So let's go. Let's start right from Malam Baba. Now, if you see, this past week, and a few days, there's been the narrative again about 2027.
Yeah.
Now, I think it's pretty early, but my perspective is that politicians will do what politicians do. They are concerned about winning the next election.
Yeah.
And you can see a lot of movements, people talking about alliances. The question that I want us to open with, Malam Baba, and then we take it to Mr. Dayo is, should we wait for the politicians again to be the ones to determine what is going to happen in 2027? Namely, that they come together, knock out the incumbents, put their own person there, use the problems of the day as a weapon, not necessarily because they want to solve it. What's your take?
Thank you very much for that opening, Prof. You got it right. Like I always say, Nigerian politicians are mostly the same actors in different costumes. And it is a very profound opening with regards to should we wait? And to answer that question, I will just take a quote from an author and philanthropist, Mrs. Rohini Linekali, in one of her write-ups way back in 2013. She said, and I quote, "We cannot be mere consumers of good governance. We must be co-creators and we must be participants. We must co-create good governance. As citizens, we have to co-create good governance. We cannot outsource it and hope to be passively happy consumers. Like everything worth its while, good governance must be earned." And that, I think, contextualizes what you are saying, that we should not just sit down on the fence and believe or assume that politicians, just because they change the logo of their party, or they change a political party and they come to sell you the dummy that they will be better than the incumbent, and we continue becoming what you call, quote unquote, suckers to the politicians. And therefore, as they are planning and positioning, like you are saying, against or towards 2027, it is time for Nigerians to shine their eyes, Prof, and prepare to have a different kind of political, a season, 2027, that we are going to evaluate, select and elect, and also follow the process to ensure that we have a better polity in 2027 in terms of the process and in terms of the emergence of the candidates, and also who wins, so that we have more acceptability, but more importantly, the requisite or expected impact after that. We can discuss further when I come back, to discuss.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, opening. And I like that quote that, we shouldn't be outsourcing these things,
Absolutely.
Quite interesting. Mr. Akitobi, are you with us?
Yes, I'm right here.
All right. So what's your opening take? The politicians are doing their things again. I think it's pretty early, but it shows how they think. I don't think they are some of them are not so much concerned about even governance, and that's why we're already having this kind of discussion. But what do you think? I mean, should we just sit down and then let them do it all over again and fool the people like they have mastered doing?
Yes, well, we tend to conflate politics and governance, whereas there's a clear distinction between the two. And I think it is the fact that we intertwine them that leads to certain misconceptions. From a political standpoint, I put it to you that jockeying for 2027 started immediately after the last election. Even though we are just hearing about it today, but all the backdoor movement towards 2027 started as soon as the results were released from the 2023 election. So that is no surprise. The first duty of any politician worth his salt is to get re-elected. And that is the first thing that is always on his mind. And so I don't think there's anything untoward or unconscionable about the fact that there's already maneuvering and negotiating for alliances and things like that towards the future of the political space. I think that's perfectly normal in any democracy. Now, from a standpoint of governance, however, which concerns the incumbent administration, concerns the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. I do think as the populace, as the electorate, that we've been a bit too passive in terms of the role we play in ensuring good governance. We've basically left it totally to all the politicians to determine how governance goes in the country. And I don't think that there is any greater check or balance or possibility for accountability and transparency beyond the people themselves. So we, the people, are the ones who can hold government to account. Yes, of course, the media plays a major role in being the information bridge between the governed and those who are doing the governing. But if we as a people don't tend to play a more active role in terms of demanding good governance through accountability and transparency, and I'm happy to see that the digital space has created the opportunity. You start seeing a lot of NGOs. You see organizations like Budget. You see organizations like Enough is Enough, who are able to galvanize critical mass of people to begin to speak up about the things that make for a better quality of life for Nigerians. We're not asking for too much. I know that it's a bit cumbersome having 220 million people to contend, but to bring about good governance for the larger group of Nigerian people doesn't really take that much. But if the feet of government is not held to the fire to ensure they do the right thing, there's a tendency for them to serve their own purposes and agendas and put that ahead of the good of the people.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Akitobi. And, both of your opening statements, quite open up the issues to deeper reflection. So Mr. Akitobi says that we got to separate government from politics. Very difficult to do, by the way. And I think you also alluded to that. But in this case, it was the secretary to the government of the federation that's opened up the, not quite kind of worms, but, ignited the controversies when he said, possibly in response to previous claims by opposition that when he said that there is no vacancy in 2027. So the question that I wanted to ask you, following up on that, Madam Baba, is that why should the people who are entrusted with public policy, people who have the work to do, the secretary to the government is the fulcrum, is the engine room. Why is it his business to be getting involved with this political narrative, in your view? And whatever is your own comment about the way we mix up politics and governance?
Well, to be honest, the two cannot work. They are not mutually exclusive. It is the politics that bring people to do what? To govern.
Right.
And it is because of the governance that we have what? The politics in a democratic setting.
Right.
So they are not mutually exclusive. It is the how and the process that determines the quality of the politicking and consequently the quality of governance. Now, to answer that question about the why the SGF, is Senator Akume is saying there is no vacancy, is simply political speak. And like Mr. Akintobi mentioned, the drums of the next season, political season, starts for all politicians, whether the incumbent or the opposition, from the day, they are sworn in, the incumbent is sworn into office. Not necessarily in Nigeria, any other place around the world. The strategy may begin in the back office.
Right.
The difference is in developing countries like Nigeria, it is not a strategy in the back office. It is just to begin to how we can make sure we retain the office. And for the opposition, how do we even ensure they don't get to finish their tenure? So the objectives sometimes are misplaced. Now, I think, in my opinion, the positioning and posturing taken by the SGF, which is similar to the posturing taken by predecessors, right, whether they are SGFs or ministers, and even sometimes NSA, speaks to the level of our political maturity and the fact that citizens, especially the elites, have not held the feet of leaders, political leaders, close to the fire enough for them to be focused on delivery rather than these distractions, if you ask me. Because within the structure of governance, there should be people that should be focused on this, if you like, peripheral conversations at this point in time for the incumbent, because in fairness to the incumbent, they need to be responding to whether it is antics or the strategies of the opposition from the beginning, because they will continue pushing. But essentially, if an SGF's preoccupation at this point in time is this political speaks, I agree with you, there's huge distraction from the key responsibility of that role. There's a lot of special advisors and a lot of surrogates that can play that role. But that being said, like I said, if it is given in small doses of measure, maybe in addition to a very critical delivery of a good governance milestone, by that achievement you can drop that. But you throw it in the empty air at a time that people are really facing some very critical socio-economic vagaries, then you start asking yourself, are we really there? But I don't blame the SGF. I don't blame the politicians. We created the environment such that people will actually feel they don't have a problem being distracted.
Interesting. Thank you so much. So Mr. Kitobi, so you argue that, politics and government are the same. Actually, we don't have any disagreement on that. But I thought that politics ought to be for the good of the electorate. And so, for instance, if those who in government, if they focus on what they said they would do, if all they are doing is trying to deliver results, now that by itself is what we endear the electorate to them. And so that in my mind is how politics and governance ought to interrelate. I don't think politics and governance ought to interrelate in a way that overstates the politics and underdevelop or undermine the governance. What's your take?
Yes, to some extent I agree with you, but I also feel that politicking in and of itself has the end goal of getting to governance. I think governance is actually the engine room where development occurs.
Yes.
But politicking is the vehicle that takes us into governance. I don't think politics in and of itself plays a role in development per se. Yes, of course, the parties will have their manifestos. Their candidates will seek to embrace the manifesto, the broad manifesto of the party. But the art of politicking itself is basically jockeying to enter into governance. But service delivery occurs within governance. Even though I would say that even opposition politics is part of governance and not part of politics, such that an opposition that's playing its role effectively. We can look at the UK as an example of how the opposition actually has a shadow cabinet that basically x-rays what the administration, the incumbent, is actually doing. So both the opposition and the incumbent play a role for service delivery that benefits the masses. And I think that the political class that is within governance is somewhat in Nigeria disconnected from the realities of the populace, the masses. And because most of Nigeria's governance occurs in the urban areas, we tend to forget that the mass of our population is actually in the suburbs and in the rural areas. And most of the time, their voices are either not heard or are underheard, to where I believe the disconnect that occurs between the political class and the masses creates an environment for under-delivery or under-performance. I believe that every government that goes into power, by and large, has good intentions. I don't see any administration in Nigeria since 1999 that didn't come into office with good intentions. But there's a saying that the path to good intentions, the path to perdition is paved with good intentions. Yeah. Essentially, having the intention to do well does not automatically guarantee that at the end of the day you will. And I think that's what Malam was referring to when he was talking and says a lot depends on you having not just the will, but also having the wherewithal to know what to do. And I think until we can bridge the gap between the needs of the masses and the aspirations of the governors, and when I say governors, I mean those who pull the levers of governance, until we can bridge the gap between those diametrically opposing ideologies, we will continue to see a situation where we won't ever get the best of performance from our political leaders. It's not going to happen until they can bridge the gap or begin to understand the yearnings. It's only during campaigning and politicking that we ever see politicians going into the hinterland to even find out what the pain and the yearnings of the average Nigerian citizen is. I think the masses are highly overlooked in Nigerian democracy. I think so. And I think that is what leads to poor results at the end of the day.
All right. I mean, thank you, Mr. Akitobi. And that takes me to something that I actually have in mind, which is the next issue that I want to table for discussion. So my take is that politicians will do their own job, because they want to win elections. Yeah. They will take the problems of the day as a weapon to knock the guys that are there now. And we have seen that happen since 1999. The big one was in 2015 when an incumbent government was actually sacked. There was this hope, But it turns out that, it was just a beginning.
Yes.
Now, I think that one of the things that we should be doing, based on that your wonderful quotes that you brought up, we should try to see whether we can get our leaders. We have leaders who have risen to the top and who are not limited by political differences, ethnic differences, religious differences, regional differences, whatever it is that divides us. We have some leaders that have risen above that.
Absolutely, I agree.
So I am of the view that before we get close to another election, is it possible for these leaders to lead a drive for an elite consensus that everybody will agree on, whether you are APC or PDP or LP or any political party at all, an elite consensus that we say that, look, we want, for instance, we want the rule of law.
Yes.
Number two, we want to deal with poverty. Number three, education and health, we need to deal with it urgently. Stuff like that. And everybody will sign off. Some academics, they call it the development bargain. Now, shouldn't our leaders who have risen above, by sheer, their destiny is to become president or governors, and they have done it, shouldn't they be leading the charge to have that kind of elite consensus that can push the greatness of this country, that can really bring it to happen? Malam, first.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you. Very well said. And that is, like I said in my opening remarks, and I'll embolden it here to say, the elites of this country have been seriously failing the people of this country, even more than the politicians. And why am I saying so? We constitute the powerhouse of governance in Nigeria, whether as permanent secretaries, directors, ministers, and even whether it is the presidents, are all extracted from this quote-unquote elite, section of the society.
Yes.
But we have been privileged and so blessed by Almighty God that most of us have been privileged to be in those positions, albeit we either become in cahoots with the vested interest to further plunder resources or rather cripple the economy, or we become we do what is called sit down look because we are in our comfort zones. We only analyze like we are doing here, blowing grammar, or we watch in the TV. Interestingly, it is so bad, Prof, that you watch elections. 80% of the people that go to vote are the masses. We don't go because we don't want the sun or the rain to beat us, or we don't want to get involved.
Wow.
Including advocacy, including sensitization of the people in the right way to understand that we all have value to add. So to that extent, I totally agree with you. And what a better time to start than now, that we should start building this quote-unquote elite consensus. While the politicians, as you can see, very strategic, whether the opposition or incumbent are already planning for the next cycle,
right,
while we are sitting and lamenting and complaining on the sidelines, and our masses are getting poorer and poorer, so that the poverty is so weaponized that at that point in time, we can only analyze while it takes its party and the blame trade continue. And I will land with this. While that elite consensus is being built,
right,
for those kind of people you are talking about to have a change of heart and get involved in the politics, the days of considering politics as a dirty game will only be over when we realize that our active participation as people of goodwill as patriots is what will lead us to easing out people that have no business in politics to become politicians, so that the governance arm that you are talking about in transitioning from politics to governance will actually happen. Otherwise, it is not a disconnection between politicians and the masses. They are part of the polity. It is purely taking us for granted because they know that the elites are in cahoots with them, whether deliberately or inadvertently. So elite consensus is the way to go. Brilliant, Prof.
Thank you. Mr. Akitobi, what's your take?
Well, my view is that everybody from the elite to the common man in the street knows what we want. Everybody in the country, the shoe pinches everybody the same way. Even the rich also cry. So I believe that issues that the elite can agree on are things that the common man also agree on. I think where you're coming from is that if there is an elite consensus, it may galvanize action from the political class. But I put it to you that I think the power of the masses actually matter more. And as Malam said there, that when elections occur, it's actually the masses that are going out to cast their vote, and the elite are actually sitting back at home and not doing much. So when I look at service delivery, and I look at how governance is in Nigeria today, what strikes me is that the administrations we have, all of their initiatives are geared towards placating the elite and ignoring the masses. The masses, they just pander to the wishes of the masses without really doing anything substantive for the masses, but pander to the elite because that is where the financial muscle is, that is where the influence is, and these are the kind of people who could probably protect their incumbency. However, when you look at it and you think at the end of the day that if you have people power and there's that consciousness, which is why education is key. It is because people are ignorant at the level of the masses. They are uneducated, unenlightened, unexposed. That is why people power is not able to prevail in this country. Unlike it has happened in Mexico, it has happened in Brazil, it has happened in places where the masses are politically conscious. So part of the reason why our education is so shabby is because our education sector is because the unlettered, the illiterate don't know how to express their grievances. They don't even know that there's a different life from the one they live, or that there is a better quality of life they could have. So when we talk about weaponization of poverty, I think the most damning aspect of it is the fact that education and enlightenment is deprived from those who need it most, because that precisely is what is keeping them in that poverty. And I think it's intentional on the part of the political class to keep education and enlightenment away from the masses in the way that will inhibit them from being able to take a more active role. Now, from a political standpoint, yes, we want more of the elite to be involved in the political process. But as Malam said, people look at it, people who are refined, cultured, educated, they look at politics in Nigeria as a dirty game. And nobody who has a good pedigree or a solid family background would want their name soiled by mixing with people of questionable character, I guess. But the larger issue is there's been a lot of talk about independent candidacies. And I think there's been some legislation to the effect of allowing that to happen. Other than perhaps the financial constraints of running as an independent, I think that could encourage a lot more of the elites who don't want to get involved with the ruffle-ruffle of party politics as played in Nigeria, because it is quite unsavory. You have to go and start at the ward level, and you have to mix with all kinds of characters. You have to do all kinds of backdoor dealings. No decent person really wants to be involved in that. So perhaps independent candidacies might open the door to a better quality of Nigerian beginning to look at possibly participating in politics.
All right. I mean, so thank you, Mr. Akintobi. Now, so I see that you make quite a bit of argument about the need for masses themselves to be involved and all that. And I wanted to clarify, before I take it to Madam Baba, that so why we are advocating for elite consensus is that you hardly find that the masses by themselves are capable of transforming their lives. It is those of us who have been exposed by the sheer grace of God, who have a bit of success and enlightenment. I think it's in European history. I think it's probably the phrase that says noblesse oblige. It is because of our whole successes and advancement that we are obligated to cure that mystery and the ignorance, the illiteracy of the masses. Is entirely up to the elite. The elites are the ones who have the responsibility to transform those who are ignorant, those whose lives are under mystery. If you remember, one of the things that I would used to say is that, they want to banish ignorance, he wants to banish disease, and he wants to banish mystery. It's always up to the elite. You will never, hardly will you find a situation where the masses, just by themselves, even in the places where we have revolution, you will find out that the revolution, they have a leadership that is elite. But I'll come back to you just so if you want to make further comments on that, Mr. Akintobi. But let me take it to Malam. So one of the reasons why I push this idea of elite consensus is because, let's look at it very frankly. The elites, they are agreed around corruption.
Yeah.
Whenever they are planning to beat the system, there is unanimity.
Absolutely.
If you look as people that we serve in government used to say, if you look at a charge, a criminal charge of corruption, money laundering, look at the one that that EFCC just released,
yes.
About the former governor of Central Bank. There were a lot of people that were involved in that 753 duplexes and apartments. So the elites of this country, they have agreed that when it comes to beating the system, when it comes to graft, let's come together. So you will find out that there is no ethnicity when they are trying to get corrupt.
Absolutely.
When they are trying to steal public resources, there is no ethnicity.
Correct.
Malam, they have no difference in religion.
Absolutely.
There is no regional difference. So that is why we are saying that, look, can we also have a consensus for good governance? Can we have a consensus for public interest? That's the point, Malam.
Correct. Brilliantly said, Prof. I love this topic because it's very critical for us. And I will start with the opening remark to qualify what you say about the elites and the politicians is conspiracy of corruption. Okay? And to confirm that, we all know in every society, even in the animal kingdom, there is what you call the 20-80 factor, meaning 20% of the group, whether it is animals, if you take, for example, the termites or the honeybee or human beings or the lions, the 20% are the leaders of the 80%. It presupposes, therefore, that the elites are supposed to drive the conversations. The elites are supposed to be the drivers of change. The Lee Kuan Yews of this world, the Mao Zedongs, if you like, have been from that elitist, group. And even where they have humble backgrounds, they've been able to rise to that level as empowered by Almighty God to bring that change. And that is why, like you are rightly advocating, we should understand we also have a responsibility. We can't just be like Rohini Lenekali said, be passive consumers. We have to be active and deliver our own part of our responsibility in a society. The elites are the middle cadre of society. They are the engine room, like I said.
Right.
For every one politician that commits graft, you will find 10 or 13 elites who most of the time even are so crafty they end up getting away free. And therefore the education you are talking about, if you take for example the tax reform,
right.
Many people have heard me as a very strong advocate for the tax reform, even though I'm from the north, taking up our governors, speaking truth to power and enlightening our people in Hausa, in vernacular. And I can tell you the feedbacks I've been getting are amazing, that people are now seeing that the politicians in cahoots with some of us, majority of us, the elite, are actually selling them dummies. So I totally agree with you. Those people where they are need us, and we have been failing them, either by enlightening them, either by refusing to be part of the conspiracy of corruption, or actively engaging during the political process. All they needed, like somebody called me and said, do you know, he tell me, Hausa, do you know that I didn't know vulnerables are not included? The politician in our area told us that all of us, we are going to be paying more tax. Wow. So, like you said, the elite consensus also includes this. Active participation in enlightening, in advocacy, in talking, speaking truth to power. And importantly, being part of the political process, including legislation, going to those public hearings, making sure we have groupings that will add our voices to the conversation, because in fairness to the politicians also, they are human beings. They cannot be omnipotent or omnipresent. So we cannot continue judging them when we sit on our hands, unless when it is convenient to us, then we start speaking. We must be active, and we must participate, and we must be circumspect.
Thank you so much, Madam. Mr. Akintobi, I'm sure you have quite a few things to add.
Yes, I do. This notion of elite consensus, I think, could be a flight of fancy, because I think the country is so terribly divided at this moment, and has been for quite some time, to where I'm not quite sure we can pull it off. Overcome the things that divide us, to be able to say we want to rally around an ideological notion that we can all embrace. I'm not sure it quite works that way. And when you said earlier that it's entirely up to the elite to pull the masses up by the bootstraps, I beg to differ to some extent.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dayo Akintobi, veteran journalist and public affairs analyst. And thank you so much, Malam Baba Yusuf, of course, the first CEO of a free zone airport in the country. Thank you so much for coming. And there you have it, another edition of